Today, police response times under scrutiny as a man faces court charged with the murder of a woman in New South Wales. ACT police investigating after war memorial sites were vandalised with pro-Palestinian graffiti. Iran's presidential election heads to a runoff after a record low voter turnout. And India wins the T20 World Cup after a thrilling 7-run victory over South Africa. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Bourchier. New South Wales police are looking into why it took officers almost an hour to respond to a welfare call after a woman was allegedly killed by her partner in the state's north. 31-year-old Dwayne John Creighton faced Lismore local court today charged with murder. Reporter Emma Hannigan has more.
Dwayne John Creighton appeared in Lismore local court this morning charged with murder. Bail was formally refused and he will appear back in Lismore court again tomorrow morning. The 31-year-old was arrested and charged after police were called to a home in the state's north in Casino in the early hours of Sunday morning. They found a woman there in her 40s who was unconscious and who later died at the scene. There is an investigation ongoing now into why it took an hour from the 000 call being received to the police responding to that call. An ongoing investigation is underway.
Police are treating the death of a woman in far north Queensland yesterday as a domestic violence homicide. A 51-year-old man has been charged with murder after allegedly stabbing a 51-year-old woman at a home in Miguel near Innisfail. Queensland police are appealing for anyone with dashcam or CCTV footage to contact them as they continue their investigations. And if these reports have raised any issues, you can get help by calling the National Sexual Assault and Family Violence Counselling Helpline on 1800 RESPECT. That's 1800 737 732. A man has faced a Melbourne court charged with murdering a fisherman on Frankston Pier in Melbourne's southeast. 36-year-old Forrest Stevenson was arrested by police shortly after a 45-year-old Cranbourne North man was found unresponsive on the pier following reports of an alleged assault. Today, the Melbourne Magistrates Court heard the police required an extension to compile a brief of evidence so pathology and DNA testing could be carried out on items recovered from the scene. Mr. Stevenson was remanded in custody and will return to court in November. Alternative learning arrangements are being organised for a primary school in Sydney's southwest after a truck crashed through a classroom yesterday afternoon. The truck, which was loaded with tons of dirt, also drove through at least 19 vehicles and a church gate. It finally came to a stop after crashing into a classroom at St Joseph's Catholic Primary School in Moorebank. The driver of the truck was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, while 2 people from other vehicles suffered minor injuries. 4 sites near the Australian War Memorial in Canberra have been vandalised overnight with pro-Palestinian messages. It's the 3rd time this year sites in the area have been defaced with graffiti. Courtney Barrett-Peters is at Anzac Parade in Canberra and joins us now. Courtney, what do we know about this latest vandalism?
Well, Dan, we're here out the front of the Vietnam War Memorial along Anzac Parade. It's actually the 2nd time that this individual monument has been vandalised. It was back in March where it was sprayed with similar pro-Palestinian sentiments, and it was only 2 weeks ago that the Australian War Memorial itself was also defaced. ACT policing are now investigating all 3 matters. It was actually only on Friday where they carried out a search warrant in relation to the previous 2 matters, but no charges have been laid.
Courtney Barrett-Peters reporting. West Australian Labor Senator Fatima Payman says she has no intention of leaving the party after being suspended from this week's caucus meeting. Senator Payman crossed the floor earlier this week to support a Greens motion to recognise the state of Palestine. Appearing on the ABC's Insiders program, the senator said she would cross the floor again if the motion was brought tomorrow. Senator Payman says her decision reflects the values of the Labor Party despite going against the caucus position on the Greens vote.
This is about 40,000 Palestinians that have been massacred and slaughtered since 7th of October. And I know that Australians are a fair people, and knowing about the Labor Party, we are a party with a conscience and champions of human rights, whether that be justice, fighting for freedom or equality. So I believe that I've been abiding by those principles of the party. If the same motion on recognising the state of Palestine was to be brought forward tomorrow, I would cross the floor.
Meanwhile, Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers has played down internal rifts within the Labor Party.
I have a good and respectful relationship with all of our colleagues, and I share Penny Wong's view that we get more done and we make more progress when we act collectively rather than individually.
A senior Hamas official says there's been no progress in ceasefire talks with Israel over the Gaza war. Arab mediators backed by the United States have so far failed to reach a ceasefire deal, with both sides blaming each other for the impasse. Hamas, which says it is still ready to discuss an agreement, maintains that Israel must end the war and withdraw all its troops from Gaza. Serbian and Israeli authorities say they're treating an attack on a police officer guarding the Israeli embassy in Belgrade as a terrorist attack. The assailant shot the policeman in the neck with a crossbow. The officer then shot and killed the attacker. Serbia's interior minister says the attack could be linked to a hardline Wahhabi Islamist movement in the country.
Hunting all of them now. We are hunting them, and it's only a matter of time and technicality. We know the names and everything else, so we will continue until we finish the job. The important thing is our hero is alive. We will have no mercy for terrorism in Serbia. No mercy at all.
Voters will head to the polls in France later today to choose a new Prime Minister in the first round of parliamentary elections. The far-right National Rally is the favourite to win the snap poll that was called by President Emmanuel Macron. Opinion surveys put Marine Le Pen's National Rally ahead of both the left-wing alliance and Mr Macron's centrist party. International history professor Matt Fitzpatrick says the result could make things more difficult for Mr Macron.
Well, it certainly means that Macron's ability to shape the national agenda will be extremely limited, although he has struggled already in the past to maintain a majority in the Assembly. But what it will mean is that you will have a situation in which the far right, should they come to power, will be able to effectively set the tone in politics on important questions regarding things like migration, but also the budget and law and order and those kinds of things.
Iran's presidential election will go to a runoff on Friday after none of the four candidates secured enough votes to win by an outright majority. Reformist candidate Masoud Pezeshkian will now face hardliner Saeed Jalili after the pair won the most votes in yesterday's poll, which saw a record low turnout. The election follows the death of President Ibrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash last month. With just 5 days to the UK general election, party leaders have doubled down on their campaigning. The Labor leader, Sir Keir Starmer, warned that nothing had been decided, even though opinion polls suggest his party is on course to win. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, called the UK the world's most successful multi-ethnic, multi-faith community while visiting a local temple. His comments come after Reform UK campaigners were scrutinised for racist comments.
The finishing line is in sight. We've had the manifestos, the pictures and promises. Now the campaigns are all about persuading supporters to get out and vote.
Change is possible. Most of all, they need to be convinced to vote for it, because change doesn't happen unless you vote for it.
Labour's leader Sir Keir Starmer has been rallying his party at an event in London this evening. There is a buzz within Labour, confident but terrified of complacency too. Far ahead in the opinion polls, but knowing it still needs to mobilise the party's voters. Rishi Sunak has been on the stump tonight too at a temple in West London. The Conservatives have spent the last few weeks defending the seats they currently hold and warning voters not to risk a change of government.
Education, hard work, family. Those are my values. Those are your values, those are Conservative values.
Still having more fun than any other leader on the campaign trail, the Liberal Democrat's Ed Davey began his final tour of the country in Scotland.
We're here to win as many seats as we can, because if we have lots of Liberal Democrat MPs in the next Parliament, we will be able to get changes in our NHS and care system. We will be able to tackle the sewage scandal.
Meanwhile, the SNP leader said only his party would stand up to spending cuts at Westminster.
People will only get that if they vote for the Scottish National Party and elect a strong group of SNP MPs.
Welcome. One thing that has united all party leaders today is fierce criticism of Reform UK.
This was a comedy act, but it was designed to hurt us, and sadly, some people believe it.
I've always been a Tory voter. What annoys me...
Nigel Farage has insisted a Reform UK canvasser racially insulting Rishi Sunak in an undercover report for Channel 4 was a setup. Channel 4 has again strongly rejected that claim, saying it was rigorous, impartial journalism. But last night, Mr Farage was also challenged about racist or offensive comments made by 3 of his candidates. The party now says they've been dropped.
You know, we've been running, as it were, to catch up with the electoral timetable. And it seems that we have made some mistakes, but we've, corrected those mistakes to the extent possible at this stage by dropping those candidates.
But as we speed towards polling day, this is not the sort of scrutiny Reform UK wants.
It may be the Pacific's largest country, but no one really knows Papua New Guinea's population size. That's because the island nation hasn't been able to organise a successful census survey in decades, and its latest attempt is on the verge of collapsing.
Going house to house to make sure even the youngest are counted.
Front information is for me. Yours is the middle one.
Papua New Guinea is holding a national census. The Pacific nation's last reliable population count was more than 2 decades ago.
We need to know how big is our population in all our districts and all our provinces. So at the end of the day, we know how many schools we need to build to educate our children. At the moment, there's a big question mark.
The census was supposed to wrap up today, but the exercise has been plagued with problems. In Central Province, materials didn't arrive on time.
We tried our best to improvise and manage.
Hi. In the capital, Port Moresby, these officers weren't given the electronic tablets they were trained to use for data collection.
We are just doing the household interview manually, using the pen, paper and form.
The census is on a path to failure.
If that prediction is correct, PNG's government will be, in some respects, flying blind.
Poverty data would be informed by that. Police-to-person ratios, doctor-to-person ratios, all these other very important indicators that really inform planning for government.
It's also crucial information for Australia, which gives roughly $600 million in aid to Papua New Guinea each year. Without accurate population data, it's difficult to know exactly where that should be spent.
Other persons.
The PNG government didn't respond to the ABC's request for comment, but has given census officers an extra 2 months to collect data, providing some hope the numbers might still add up. Marion Farr, ABC News, Port Moresby.
Every year, more than 50,000 people are reported missing in Australia. Many are located easily and reunited with their loved ones quickly. But the family and friends of those that remain missing experience something experts call ambiguous loss, one of the most traumatic forms of grief.
Patty, it's Nikki!
Nicole Lidke is searching. She's walked hundreds of kilometres, across hills and paddocks, through dense scrub and local farms. She's looking for her brother.
I believe he's on his journey home, and I want to find him on that journey.
Patrick disappeared from northern New South Wales in April. Authorities have scaled back the official search.
The Prince, you just keep walking here, you cross, there's a hidden waterfall.
But his family won't give up.
I've literally slid down mountains, fallen into mud, but the strength of the community, there's always been a hand out, reaching and actually pulling me.
Infrared cameras, paragliders and even dingoes
We'll follow him now.
are being enlisted to find Patrick, who is neurodiverse.
You know, you've got to have hope, but there's no closure. You know, you're not sure whether he's alive or not. So it's a fine line between where do you sit, you know? You've just got to keep trying.
Patrick's family is not alone. In Queensland last year, more than 9,000 people were reported missing. The number of long-term missing people continues to grow. Some families can spend a lifetime looking for answers, and experts say their grief tends to get worse, not better, as time passes.
We need to think better about missing as a public health crisis rather than simply a police response.
Experts call it ambiguous grief.
These are not just simple stories that we listen to while we fold our washing or we do our washing up, but they are true stories where there are victims that are still waiting for news about what happened to their loved ones.
I think every police officer's got that one case that eats at them.
Most people who go missing are found relatively quickly. Some cases are never solved.
Some families never get the answers they want. They're always left wondering what's happened to their missing loved one.
A national DNA program is using cutting-edge technology to identify human remains.
Some of these cases have been around on police files for decades and decades.
Sandrine Jordan is one of those cold cases. The 37-year-old vanished from a property in Caboolture almost 13 years ago.
We don't know what happened. We don't know anything. We don't have a body. We don't have anything, so we've just got our memories.
Her sister Christine has recently uncovered new information about her disappearance. She wants an inquest and the case reopened.
I don't want it so that it's 40 years later we finally find that the answer was right there but just wasn't looked at. So until I get the answers, I am going to keep pushing.
Back on the Gold Coast, Nicole Lidke too is pushing for answers. Driven by the hope she'll find her brother alive.
It's emotionally exhausting but also physically exhausting. But I think Patrick has given me a strength that I never knew that I had.
Artificial platforms have been installed along South Australia's coastline, offering safe breeding environments for the endangered eastern osprey. Osprey are at critically low numbers in the state, but with the new nests already attracting birds, conservationists have high hopes for a successful mating season.
A big bird delivering a safe haven for one of South Australia's rarest big birds. This new platform at Port Neale, one of 18 across the state, for the endangered eastern osprey to call home. They're a substitute for natural nesting habitats eroded by coastal development and, in some cases, cliff collapses.
All of the coastline around here, there aren't any big trees, so any high places for them to nest. Unfortunately, shags also like the place as a resting spot, so they'd land on it and pull the nest to bits, and it became a bit of a tug of war.
The conservation project takes a community effort in towns across the state. The structures are made by men's shed volunteers on the Yorke Peninsula, and others build the starters' nests.
At Smoky Bay, the oyster farmers, at one stage we had 3 oyster boats and crew out there giving us a hand. And same at Streaky, we had oyster boats, we had members of the community, and at Port Neale we had the men's shed there.
It is thought there are only 50 pairs of eastern osprey in the wild in SA.
When we put this tower in that we have now, within an hour and a half there were 2 ospreys sitting on it, which was pretty thrilling really, to think that we've done something that was going to be helpful for them.
Most people now around South Australia know what an osprey is. They know that they're in trouble and that there is a commitment to helping them recover.
The last platform for the season is being installed here at Talker, south of Port Lincoln. The locals will be keeping a close eye on it in coming months, hoping for some eggs later in the year. The other platforms are already breeding success.
The total number of chicks that the platforms have produced is 14, and there's no question at all that we wouldn't have an additional 14 Osprey chicks flying around the environment if it weren't for these artificial platforms.
The graceful birds are bringing tourists to small coastal communities.
Well, right from the time I put the nest on the navigation pole, everyone could, it was only like 200 metres out from the shore, and everyone was going there and people were calling in and taking photos. We were all hoping, we got our fingers crossed for this year. A bit of a romance happens and we get to see some fledglings. Yeah, it'll be good.
A fledgling project with a purpose. Jodie Hamilton, ABC News.
Paralympic swimmer Jasmine Greenwood will head to her second Games in Paris in a few short weeks. She was just 16 when she took home a silver medal from Tokyo in the 100-metre butterfly. And while she's aiming for a podium finish, she says swimming has changed her life in more ways than one. Maddie Easterbrook and Don Shiel have the story.
When I was 6, I acquired a brain injury, which was actually through appendicitis that became septic, which is pretty uncommon. Yeah, as a 6-year-old, I ended up with 2 strokes in the right side of my brain, which affects the left side of my body. And since then and now, I've suffered with left side weakness and a tremor in my left hand and leg. Walking at the time was probably harder than swimming. And it was a way for me to be able to move without pain and also make friends, other people who'd been through similar things or completely different things as well. Yeah, I just found my passion for it. I found that I enjoyed doing it and I liked competing, and then I started being good at it, and yeah, I've just never stopped. So when I'm swimming in the pool, I'm competing against people who are with similar conditions such as cerebral palsy or acquired brain injuries as well, but also people who are missing limbs like their foot and their hand. So sometimes people get a bit confused as to why is she competing against someone with no hand? But it's actually, that's how it's made fair, because my level of impairment is the same as somebody missing a hand. The attention on Paris is going to be like never before, especially with COVID with Tokyo. A lot of people kind of had to watch it from TV because it was all over TV. And that's why we got a lot of views, but I think this time people are actually going to be genuinely really interested, as they should be. It's going to be great, and yeah, I think it's just going to continue growing, which is exactly what the sport needs and deserves.
And with more sport, here's Daniela Intili.
India has won its second T20 World Cup title with a dramatic 7-run win over South Africa. Virat Kohli ended his international T20 career with 76 runs off 59 balls as India reached 7 for 176. The result was still in doubt at the start of the final over, with South Africa needing 16 runs, but the Proteas crumbled after Heinrich Klaasen's half-century, Hardik Pandya nabbing 3 wickets for India, who claimed its first World Cup victory in 13 years. The Storm have consolidated top spot on the NRL ladder after beating Canberra 16 points to 6 in Melbourne. But the win was soured by a hamstring injury to Xavier Coates as he attempted to score a try late in the match. The Maroons winger is now in serious doubt for the State of Origin decider on July the 17th. The Raiders lost 2 players to head injury assessments and were forced to defend for long periods of the match. It's Melbourne's 4th straight victory, while Canberra slipped to 12th on the ladder. The Knights edged out Parramatta 34 points to 26 in a seesawing contest in Newcastle. Greg Marzhew and Bradman Best both bagged doubles for the Knights, while rookie Will Price scored in his NRL debut in front of his legendary and proud father Leon. The Knights securing a first home victory since round 9. Essendon's top 4 hopes suffered a hit after a crushing 45-point loss to Geelong on a wet night. Bombers forward Jade Gresham opened the scoring in his 150th game as Essendon led by 5 points at the main break. But Geelong kicked 10 goals to Essendon's 2 after half-time to win 16-9 105 to 9-6 60. Adelaide recorded an upset 16-point win over the GWS Giants at the Adelaide Oval. The Crows won 13 16.94 to the Giants at 12.678. Isaac Ranking starred for Adelaide with 27 disposals, while Darcy Fogarty booted 3 majors. Lockie Whitfield had 41 disposals for the Giants, while skipper Toby Green finished with 38 possessions and 3 goals. The Crows are now 14th on the ladder, while the Giants drop out of the top 8. Germany has defeated Denmark 2-0 to advance to the quarterfinals of the Men's European Championship after a storm-affected clash in Dortmund. The game was suspended for 20 minutes in the first half due to the weather before second-half goals to Kai Havertz and Jamal Musiala sealed the result for the tournament hosts. They'll take on either Spain or Georgia, who play tomorrow morning. Elsewhere, defending title holders, Italy crashed out after losing to Switzerland 2-0 in Berlin. The Swiss will play either England or Slovakia in the quarter-final. 3-time Formula One world champion Max Verstappen will start from pole position for the Austrian Grand Prix. The championship leader followed up his win in the earlier sprint to lock in a front-row start for the 4th straight year for Red Bull. McLaren's Lando Norris will start second ahead of Mercedes' George Russell. Fellow McLaren driver and Australian Oscar Piastri qualified 7th fastest. Daniel Ricciardo will line up 11th for RB. The Melbourne Mavericks have boosted their chances of making the Super Netball finals with a nail-biting 72-71 win over the Sunshine Coast Lightning in Hobart. Trailing by 3 goals, Gabby Sinclair nailed 2 super shots in the last 40 seconds, while Lightning captain Steph Fretwell missed her attempt for a 2-pointer on the buzzer. The 5th-placed Mavericks are now equal on points with the 4th-placed Lightning. French cyclist Romain Bardet has won the opening stage of this year's Tour de France. The 33-year-old overcame sweltering conditions to claim the 206-kilometre stage from Florence to Rimini. Tadej Pogačar, who is aiming to follow up his Giro d'Italia title with a 3rd Tour trophy, finished in the main pack along with 2-time defending champion Jonas Vingegaard. Australian rider Jai Hindley is 15th, heading into the 2nd stage, 5 seconds off the lead.
Looking around the country, in Queensland, cloudy with rain developing about the south of the state, partly cloudy with isolated showers in the east and mostly sunny in the north. Scattered showers for New South Wales and the ACT and the chance of a thunderstorm about the northern inland. In Victoria, a cold and cloudy day with scattered showers over southern districts easing later in the day. Tasmania can also expect some showers for most of the state, easing in the afternoon. A rain day for South Australia, particularly in the north and the south. In Western Australia, showers for most of the state and morning fog over the southern parts. Cool and cloudy conditions in the Northern Territory with a high chance of rain and showers. Looking ahead to tomorrow's forecast for the capital cities, rain for Brisbane, late showers in Sydney. Canberra is set to be mostly sunny, mostly cloudy in Melbourne, mostly sunny for Hobart, a late shower in Adelaide, mostly sunny in Perth, and a sunny day for Darwin with a top of 32. And that's the latest from ABC News. I'm Dan Bourchier. Thanks for joining us. We'll leave you with these pictures from Sydney Zoo, which has welcomed the birth of 3 capybara pups. Thanks for your company.